The LA Kings did not play their best, but it was still good enough to beat the Sabres. I'll tell you why the Kings are a different team since the last time they were embarrassed by Buffalo. Pheonix Copley just keeps on winning, and there is an alternative to Jakob Chychrun that's about to get traded. Could he be coming to LA? We'll talk about all that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. My name is Eddie Garcia. I'm your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for the past 30 years. The LA Kings are now 2-0 since the All-Star break after a 5-2 win over the Sabres last night. The second period was the turning point in this game. After a scoreless opening period, forward Adrian Kempe scored his fifth straight goal. Remember, he had four straight in the game against Pittsburgh on Saturday. This one, a shorthanded goal, giving him a team-leading 27 goals on the season. We'll talk more about Kempe being red hot at the moment in just a bit. Arthur Kaliyev scored his eighth power play goal of the season, tied for the team lead, his 10th overall. Then you had defenseman Sean Walker and Matt Roy scoring as well, and LA had a 4-0 lead after two periods for Walker. It was his third goal of the year for Roy, his seventh goal of the season. In the third period, Victor Arvidsson added a power play goal, his 14th of the year, to make it 5-0 before Buffalo would add on a couple of goals at the end of the game. That was plenty of offensive support for Kings goaltender Pheonix Copley, who allowed 2 goals on 29 shots to get the win and improved to 17-3-1 as an LA King this season. More on Copley coming up in a few minutes. The Kings special teams played well in their win over Buffalo. They killed off 4 of the 5 Sabres power plays, including some key kills in the first and second periods to keep Buffalo from getting any momentum in the game. Plus, LA scored a shorthanded goal as well. As for the power play, Kings went 2 for 3 with the man advantage. And to be honest, I didn't think their power play looked nearly as good as it has in recent weeks, but it was effective. The Kings, with the win, improved to 30-18-7 on the season and moved into second place in the Pacific Division, 2 points up on Seattle and Edmonton, and just 1 point back of Vegas for first place in the division. It is pretty remarkable how much the Kings have improved since that last meeting against the Sabres back on December the 13th. You remember the embarrassing 6-0 loss in Buffalo when the Kings allowed 6 goals in the third period. Well, they are a different team since then. Of course, the next game, I should say, they went to Boston, beat the top team in the league. And if you look at the Kings' record after that Sabres loss in Buffalo, that 6-0 embarrassment, the Kings had a 15-12-5 record for 35 points. That was 13th most in the NHL. Since that game, the Kings are 15-6-2 for 32 points. That is the 5th most points scored over that span in the NHL, and the most by any Western Conference team over that 2-month span. All the other 4 teams ahead of them are from the Eastern Conference. The goals scored for the Kings before and after that Buffalo game, pretty much consistent. Before that game, or I should say after the loss in Buffalo, the Kings were scoring 3.39 goals per game. Since then, they're scoring 3.31 goals per game. But the goals against has much improved. The Kings were allowing 3.69 goals per game after that Sabres loss. They've allowed 2.91 per game ever since. The power play after that Buffalo loss, operating at 23.4%. Since that game, 27.6%. The penalty kill after that game against the Sabres was killing off 70.4% of the power plays against. Since then, 81.3%. They jumped from 28th in the league on the penalty kill after that Sabres loss to 15th currently. The goal differential after that Buffalo loss was -12. Since then, over the last 2 months, the Kings are a +11 in goal differential. I know LA Kings head coach Todd McClellan has said repeatedly that we in the media have made too much of the way things have turned around since that Buffalo loss. I will have to respectfully disagree with our head coach on that one. It has been remarkable how that embarrassing loss and then the subsequent next game win over the top team in the NHL seemingly has turned the fortunes of the LA Kings around. And I don't think it's something that hasn't been made a lot of, or I should say maybe it is something that's been made a lot of, and deservedly so. I mean, it is remarkable. Like I said, the numbers pretty much across the board have improved. The record, the goal differential, the power play, the penalty kill. The offense has stayed about the same, but everything else has gotten remarkably better. And it's one of the big reasons why the LA Kings are where they are right now and very much in the thick of things for a playoff spot. As we mentioned, right now they're in second place in the Pacific Division, but it is very tight, as we'll get into more in a bit, and things can change on a nightly basis. That's why this time of year is so exciting. Not only is every game literally an important game for the LA Kings, but every night is literally an important night for the LA Kings as far as what their opponents are doing as well, the teams that they're battling with for playoff spots in the Pacific Division. So every day in the NHL right now, if you're a Kings fan, is something to talk about, something to be interested in, and that's pretty fun because there are some other teams right now who would love to be in the position the Kings are in, and they are not. We got to talk more about Juice, Adrian Kempe, and I don't know, does Pheonix Copley have a nickname? The man from North Pole, Alaska, I don't know, the snowman? What does he have a nickname? If not, we'll have to come up with something. But I haven't heard one. But anyway, we are going to talk more specifically about how those two guys are playing of late. But I do need to let you know before we get into that today's episode of Locked on LA Kings is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's the midway point of the NBA season, and it's the perfect time to download the FanDuel app, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's a bonus bet back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sports app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point spreads to three-pointers made in a game. It's up to you. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet over or up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/locked on. That's fanduel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Before we get into Adrian Kempe and Pheonix Copley, we do have to crown a king for last night's win. It's something that I probably should have started at the beginning of the year, but better late than never. We've been doing it now for the last couple of weeks. And if you don't know, around the NHL, there are different things that players give out in the locker room to the player of that game after a win. In the past, it's been stuff like hard hats. I know I saw something, I think it was the Oilers have some sort of like a leather vest that they give out with patches on it. It can be all kinds of different things, but for the Kings, obviously, it makes sense for it to be a crown. And I think certainly the two guys we're going to focus on in just a minute, Adrian Kempe and Pheonix Copley, certainly are candidates to be crowned. But I'm going to go with Kings second line center, Phillip Danault. He had 3 primary assists in the win over Buffalo, 2 coming on the power play. And okay, one of them was when he whiffed on a shot and barely got a piece of it, and it went over to Arthur Kaliyev and he put it home. But hey, it was still a primary assist on the scorebook. So 3 primary assists for Phillip Danault, a 3-point night for him. And we're going to give him our crown for the win over the Sabres. Long live the King. All right, now let's get into the man who was given the crown by me in the win over Pittsburgh. That, of course, was Adrian Kempe. Scored again last night. This one shorthanded for his team-leading 27th goal of the season. He is 8 away from his career high that he set last year of 35 goals. The man they call Juice is second on the Kings right now, or I should say he's the second LA King ever to have scored 7 goals in a 3-game span. Tomas Sandstrom, back in the day, the only King to score 8 goals in a 3-game span. But Kempe also becoming the 3rd LA King ever to record 5 consecutive goals scored. Kempe is tied currently with David Pastrnak of the Boston Bruins, 2 behind Jack Hughes of the Devils for the most goals scored in 2023. So those guys have been tearing it up since the start of the new calendar year. Hughes with 15 goals, Kempe and Pasternak each with 13 goals. Not where I got 8 from. Kempe on pace for a 40-goal season. The last time the Kings had a player score 40 or more in a season was Luc Robitaille, who had 63 in the 1992-93 season. The Kings' record for goals in a season, 70 by Bernie Nichols in the 1988-89 season. Obviously, Adrian Kempe not gonna reach any of those two marks, but still, Adrian Kempe is looking great. He's obviously red hot at the moment. He had that 1 month in December where he was kind of off, but every other month for Kempe has been solid, and he's doing it again here in the month of February. And keep feeding him the puck for as long as this lasts. Although he's been pretty consistently hot, maybe not quite as hot as he is right now, but he's been very, very good for the LA Kings all season long. And just another snipe for him on the coming shorthanded as well for the LA Kings last night. Pheonix Copley just continues to win. As I mentioned, 17, 3-1 are his win totals over the season. Last night's victory over the Sabres, again, his 17th win. That's a new career high for him. He had a number of high-quality saves in the win over Buffalo, none better than that 3-save moment he had in the second period in one sequence where he made the initial save, and then the Sabres had 2 quick chances on the rebounds in close, and he turned those aside as well. He did slightly lower his goals against average to 2.74 and did slightly increase his save percentage to 903. As we know, those numbers are not going to be good enough to get him in the Vezina Trophy discussion for the top goalie in the league. But again, it's good enough for what the Kings need and what the Kings are getting from Pheonix Copley. But what really stands out for Pheonix Copley is the winning percentage, 7.73 winning percentage right now for Pheonix Copley. Only one other goalie in the NHL has a better winning percentage than Copley, and that is Linus Ullmark of the Boston Bruins. He's at 788. That is some pretty damn good company for the man from North Pole, Alaska. Ullmark is pretty much all been handed the Vezina Trophy for this year because he does have the numbers as far as goals against and save percentage in addition to the wins. But again, the only 2 goalies in the NHL right now that have a winning percentage over 700, Linus Ullmark and Pheonix Copley of the LA Kings. And head coach Todd McClellan was asked after the Buffalo game if the win percentage was really all that kind of mattered. And he said, look, we would love for Pheonix to have better numbers across the board. Pheonix Copley would love to have a better save percentage and a better goals against average. But in the end, ultimately, yes, it's about winning and losing. And winning percentage is the most important thing. And if you're going to ask any goalie, which one of the numbers would he rather have, he's going to pick the wins because he's doing his job in net. His teammates are helping him out. And in the end, that's exactly what is going on right now with Pheonix Copley. No question in my mind that the Kings organization and the players, and I got to think most of the fans, believe at this point that this obviously isn't just a goaltender who's sort of hot or playing over his head. I've been saying it pretty much since day one when we kind of got a feel for what Pheonix Copley was doing, for the numbers that he was putting up. Again, they're not out of this world, but they're good enough. They're solid that this is something that he could sustain for the entire season. I think at this point, he's definitely proven that. I don't have a lot of concerns about him, as some might say, turning into a pumpkin. I heard a commentator that I know personally say that not long ago, that he thought Pheonix Copley was ready to turn back into a pumpkin, if you know the Cinderella story. And that has not been the case. Since then, he got his first shutout as a King, had a solid game last night, allowing just the 2 goals. So, yeah, I don't see Pheonix Copley really deviating from what we're seeing from him all season long. Like I said, I've said it a million times. If he were playing so far above his head, that you're just like, there's no way that this could be, it's a small sample size, whatever. But no, he's played enough for us to know what he is and what he isn't. And I think he, maybe he is getting a little bit better, getting more comfortable with the team in front of him, getting more comfortable that he is the number 1 goalie at this point. I know there has been discussion of the Kings going out and getting another goaltender. I think if they do that, it would only be an insurance policy in case something happened to Pheonix Copley, because they don't want to have to turn to Jonathan Quick and Cal Peterson, maybe somebody else, a veteran in net, that they could use in case of an emergency. I feel good with Pheonix Copley as the Kings' number one goalie. If there's something out there that's reasonable, then maybe, but I don't know. Like I said, I think the Kings are comfortable with Copley. I'm comfortable with him. I think most Kings fans are at this point as well. So I think the number one job for the Kings clearly it's Pheonix Copley's, and I feel good about where he is and where the Kings can go with him in net in the playoffs. As far as the Kings upgrading, we know left-handed defense is a priority, and he's not Jakob Chychrun, but there is another sought-after left-handed defenseman that apparently is on the verge of being traded, and could he be coming to LA? We will talk about that in just a moment, but first, I need to remind you that today's episode of Locked On LA Kings also brought to you by our friends over at Athletic Greens. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. AG1 contains less than 1 gram of sugar, costs you less than $3 a day, and it's just one scoop in a cup of water. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NHL network. That's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. As you likely already know, Arizona Coyotes left-handed defenseman Jakob Chychrun is the most coveted defenseman known to be available on the trade market ahead of the deadline. There's some talk about maybe Erik Karlsson of the Sharks being moved, but we know the Coyotes definitely are looking to trade Jakob Chychrun because they have scratched him for the last couple of games. And as we mentioned on a previous show, that is usually a very good indicator that that player is about to be traded. Well, the same can now be said for Vladislav Gavrikov of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He has been scratched from the Blue Jackets lineup tonight for trade-related reasons. That's the official word of why that has happened. So it appears that he is likely on the verge of being moved as well. The Kings could be a landing spot for Gavrikov. If you're unfamiliar with this player, he is, again, a left-handed defenseman, which the Kings are looking for. He's 27 years old. He is a defensive defenseman. He does not bring the offensive game that a player like Jakob Chychrun does. He's got 3 goals and 7 assists in 52 games this season. His current cap hit is $2.8 million. This is his 4th NHL season. Gavrikov did have career highs last season in assists and points with 28 assists and 33 points playing in 80 games. He is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Again, he is not as good as Jakob Chychrun, but you could obviously get him for a lesser price than you're going to have to pay for a Jakob Chychrun. I had a brief discussion with Jay Forster. He is the host of Locked On Blue Jackets. He believes Columbus is looking for a first-round pick and a mid-level prospect in return. He also said to me, quite frankly, that if he were a GM of another team, he would not pay that high of a price for Gavrikov, which was interesting. Appreciate his honesty on that, although he said he is hopeful that the Blue Jackets can get that asking price. I am inclined to agree with him. I think Jakob Chychrun is one thing, but I'd rather stay, frankly, with what we have than make a move for a Vladislav Gavrikov. But we shall see. The way the Kings defense has been playing of late, even with Sean Durzi playing on that left side, which I know, could be a factor as the Kings go along and play in more important games. And I know that you would like to have, your preference is to have left-handed defenseman on the left side, right-handed defenseman on the right side. So I get it. I understand it. But it always, and it is always with all of these things, it depends on what is the price. What is the price? What is the asking price? But I would not give up a first-round pick and a mid-level prospect for Vladislav Gavrikov. But we'll see. He is likely, as far as the known defensemen that are definitely available out there on the market, a lot of people have him as a distant number 2 behind Jakob Chychrun. So again, if anything happens as far as Chychrun or Gavrikov or the Kings making some sort of a move after one of our episodes has already been released, we will have some instant reaction for you on Twitter and Instagram. And both of those you can find at Locked On LA Kings on those 2 platforms. Let's check out the Pacific Division standings going into Tuesday's action. And yeah, I know you could just look at your phone and do it, but I'm doing it for you. And you're welcome. Um, Thanks to the win by the LA Kings over the Sabres, the Kings have moved from 4th to 2nd in the Pacific Division. They are 1 point back of Vegas for first place in the division, 2 points up on both Seattle and Edmonton. The Kraken are currently in 3rd place. The Oilers are in 4th as the number 1 wildcard team in the West. And by the way, Calgary, who lost in overtime last night to Ottawa, picked up a point to move 1 point up on Colorado for the 2nd wildcard spot in the West. So as of today, the Pacific Division has 5 of the 8 playoff spots in the Western Conference. As for what's coming up tonight in the Pacific, only one team in action. That is Seattle. They're in Winnipeg to take on the Jets, one of the top teams in the Central Division. So a good matchup there. If the Kraken win tonight and get 2 points, they would bump LA into 3rd place. They'd take over 2nd place again. But if the Kraken were to lose in overtime or shootout or in regulation, obviously, the Kings will remain in 2nd place by a point if Seattle loses in overtime or a shootout. If not, then the Kings would maintain that 2-point cushion on the Seattle Kraken. So let the scoreboard watching begin. I'll be tuning in to check out the Kraken and Jets a little bit later on tonight. We have a special show planned for you tomorrow. And I'd be lying if I said I'm not 100% sure logistically we're going to be able to pull it off because it's got a lot of moving parts to it. But we're planning on having a Pacific Division roundtable with me and the Locked On hosts from the Golden Knights, Kraken, and the Oilers, the top 4 teams currently in the Pacific Division. It was my idea, so if it goes well, I get all the credit. If it doesn't go well, clearly it was all their fault. So we shall see how it goes. Hopefully we can pull it off. Everybody says that they're going to be in to try this out. So it should be fun. We'll see how it goes. And if it goes well, then maybe it's something we do and try at another time. But looking forward to seeing how this Pacific Division roundtable goes. We'll talk obviously about what these teams need at the trade deadline, the interesting goaltending situation for all 4 of those teams. Certainly not what we expected going into the season. Do we think all of our teams are going to make the playoffs and whatever else pops up? It should be fun. Hopefully that goes off without a hitch. But there's some technical issues with it that need to go well. So we'll see how it goes. So hopefully that will happen tomorrow. Also, hopefully we have a special show for you on Friday. It will be a Friday feedback coming up on the show this week. Don't forget your thoughts on opinions on all things LA Kings, from Dustin Brown's special night to the way the Kings have been playing of late, trade deadline speculation, whatever's on your mind. You can send me an email, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can post your comments below as well. I will certainly check those out and we will get your feedback coming up on our Friday show. Thank you for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL draft, plus NHL draft rankings and top prospect comparisons for every team. That is Locked On NHL Prospects, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I am Eddie Garcia. Thank you so much for watching this edition of Locked On LA Kings, listening or watching on the YouTube channel. Have yourself a great day. And as always, go Kings go.